yelling. Don't worry, Wonder Woman. I wouldn't let anything happen. I wasn't yelling because of the lights.
Why is there screaming? Bunny, it's late. You need to get into bed.
Okay, Dad.
Oh, hey, welcome to Picture Remedy. This is Cinematic Post-Mortem 5 for The Pursuit. A very interesting project. I hope you enjoy the conversation. See you on the inside. All right, let's see. So to speak about The Pursuit is to think about where I was at the time. So I was living in San Francisco and looking for places to live down in Los Angeles. A huge factor there when you're moving from one city to the next is employment. So I thought to myself, what would benefit a filmmaker? And I decided to look at rental houses. So I contacted a whole slew of rental houses here in Los Angeles, and Los Angeles Camera Rentals hit me back and said that I could come in for an interview. Actually, you know what? I walked in right off the street. I had driven down to LA and I was sleeping in my car for 3 days and just going to different places. So actually, I showed up to a place called the Hollywood Production Center. Inside of these Hollywood Production Centers have rental spaces. I didn't know this at the time, but I learned it afterwards. And these rental spaces would be rented out by television shows. So they'd have writers' rooms and all kinds of different production. They'd have casting and all kinds of things, renting out the spaces there at Hollywood Production Centers. And inside of a Hollywood Production Center, this gentleman named Federico, he actually ended up... What's up, buddy? You okay? It's all right. It's okay. What is it? Come here. Come here. Inside of a Hollywood production center, Federico put his rental house, which was incredibly smart because you're in the midst of all these productions and people would come and just knock on the door and ask what he had to rent. So I had not called or anything. I just was going to walk in. I mean, most places have a normal location. You just walk straight indoors. In this particular situation, I went to the front desk of the Hollywood Production Center, told them I had a meeting with Los Angeles Camera Rentals, which I didn't. And they told me what room to go to. I went back, knocked on the door, and Federico opened the door, eyes wide. Who are you? And I had a conversation with him. He decided that he might be in the place to hire somebody. We just kind of shook hands, and then I ended up driving back to San Francisco. Now, he didn't know this, but he had called me the next day, and I'm back in San Francisco. And he said, hey, would you like to meet for a drink later and have a conversation? So I tell him yes, not wanting to miss this opportunity to make money in a place that I wanted to live. I drove back down another 6 hours, depending on traffic, and met him for that drink. And then it became Los Angeles Camera Rentals. Now, the reason why that story was important to the movie The Pursuit is now I got that job, moved to Los Angeles, and I was in the middle of all this rental gear. And so while I was there working with people, I ended up meeting a gentleman named Anthony Naylor, and he did all kinds of video production and photography. And through him, I met a number of individuals, but his daughter is the star of The Pursuit. So that's how I ended up bringing that together. And then some of the equipment that I shot the movie with, some of the equipment that I shot the film with, came from the rental house, because getting that job, I was able to rent equipment for free and make connections. Look, that's a great nugget of information right there. You want to move to Los Angeles or San Francisco or New York City, a good idea is to get a job at a rental house. And then through that job, you can connect with a lot of people, maybe get discounts on gear, Now, when I was talking to some rental houses, I would have some people push back pretty heavily on wanting to hire filmmakers because they don't really want people to be interacting with their clientele on that front, which makes sense, you know. And also maybe they don't want to hire a bunch of filmmakers who might pay for gear to rent. But getting into the production of The Pursuit, so without going any like giant political path here, I was a preschool teacher for 3 years back in Cincinnati, Ohio. I've said that on a previous film. And all through my adult life, I've been super aware of police brutality. Now, I'm a huge believer in there are good and bad people in all industries. And I think if these last 3 or 4 years have proven anything, that's incredibly true, that there are good and bad people in all industries. So now, with that said, I was thinking a lot about the kids who are involved in some of these police shootings and, you know, specifically what would happen to those kids' psyches if they were to witness, you know, a parent figure or a parent being murdered in front of them or killed, or however you want to put it in the specificity of it. When thinking about how they might interpret what they're reacting to years and years later, you know, I mean, we have this tendency in our society, I think, to expect people to get over trauma. You know, like time goes by to some degree and people are like, what, you're still feeling something? You know, what the hell? And so I had written this story about this little girl who experiences the loss of her father, and he happens to be killed by a police officer. And the idea was to create more of an awareness of where is she going to be in 20 years and how she feels, and, you know, and just try to illuminate some thoughts that I was having, because when I was a preschool teacher, I would always look at all these kids and think to myself, you know, some of these kids are possibly going to end up in jail, or, you know, maybe homeless, or any kind of circumstances. I mean, I think that's the mind of just a storyteller, always trying to find us, you know, think of a story and where they come from in our world. But I had made this back in, gosh, I can't remember exactly the year, like between 2016 and 2018, maybe 2017 or something, or yeah, I think it's 2017 is when this was put together. But really, it's a father telling his daughter about death and explaining death. You know, I can only talk about subjects from my point of view. So as a future father, I have no children at this moment, but as a future father, I can imagine trying to speak about death would be a difficult subject. Now, I can't even imagine how difficult it would be through the eyes of a different ethnicity or sex or any certain, you know, you only have your particular lens that you can see through, but you can sympathize with the world. You can sympathize with where people are coming from if you open up yourself to it, honestly. But anyways, I had this opportunity to show a group of my short films in Cincinnati, Ohio. And so I had written this script that I really wanted to get off the ground. And I decided that very quickly, in about a week and a half from coming up with this concept, that I would throw together this idea. So I had a little short film to add to the group of short films to show to my audience back in Cincinnati, Ohio. And so that's where The Pursuit came from. It was really a proof of concept film where me and some friends came together and put some thoughts down. The actual film I wrote goes much further and has many more ideas behind it. And during that time, when I had made The Pursuit, I was flown around the country, a couple different places, and a couple individuals talked about wanting to put some money into it, and then they would all try to get you to twist some things, you know. But I mean, I have no idea where people's opinions and thoughts come from. So I'm not like a political voice in that context. I try not to judge individuals for where their thoughts might be coming from. But when I realized I couldn't do the full script justice like I wanted to, then I was just so happy to have this beautiful little film that we made with no money. I mean, there's no money behind it. You know, it's just a lot of these films that I'm putting together, some of them will have some financing behind them, but a lot of them is me being a bit scrappy. You know, another great cool thing that I love with The Pursuit in all these films is that I'm using different cameras for each one of these projects. It just kind of occurred to me when going through this material and now putting it out into the wild that I realized, like, The Pursuit was shot with a Canon C100 Mark II and a Canon C300. Yeah, Canon C300 Mark II. And that body I took from the rental house with some lenses. And so the C300 Mark II sensor I use for the car wash, and the C100 Mark II sensor I use for the house interior scenes. There's a difference of aspect ratio happening in the film too. It starts to squeeze as the police officer pulls him over right here as we're coming to the sequence. And let's see here. So I love seeing this palm tree. Right, I don't know why. You know, I never lived around palm trees growing up, so there's something that I you know, makes me feel very good. But see, I made him faceless here very purposefully. But during this part of the sequence, as Ty, the actor, walks up, knocks on the window, I begin to squeeze the aspect ratio. Whether you can feel it or not, it starts to tighten. Hopefully, maybe a little anxiety building. It was really an experiment in the time. I wanted to experiment with the aspect ratio changing throughout a movie. But the real experience here with this particular short is I learned a lot by working with the actors to make it. For instance, coming to that area where you're bringing two actors together and you're trying to create this horrible sequence of a human judging another human, I learned so much there. For instance, it's so easy for that police officer to come across racist and hateful, and the actor really takes it there because that's where they feel like they have to get to. But what I was really after, and didn't come across in this film actually, is I was more interested in looking and analyzing a fear-based shooting where a police officer is approaching a vehicle afraid, because that's what, you know, I think we should be having. And again, I'm not trying to go to a political route here, but just going to working with actors, you know, I didn't even think when coming up with the material how it would be to work with an actor and get him to approach this other actor in a very aggressive manner, or not even aggressive, but just, you know, a police brutality moment. Like, how to do two actors really approach that? Because they both have a deep admiration and respect for each other. And so inevitably the actor starts to go really far to the left, and you have to suddenly bring them back. And how do you do it? And so working on this proof of concept film, it really helped me wrap my head around a lot of elements, you know, a lot of storytelling tools, and also working with actors with really difficult material and how will they respond to it. But we shot this so fast. This film was shot in like a half a day. But it was such a cool experience to put it together. And the little girl, gosh, I haven't said very much, but she just murders this movie. Her performance is so darn good, and she's so natural. To be completely honest with you, part of that is putting her in situations like having her eat the ice or having her really experience the car wash. You know, so many of those factors play into a child being able to have something to do while they're performing. But I think I haven't edited this piece together in a couple of hours. I mean, the whole thing. But, you know, I'm proud of it. I'm very thankful that we put it together. I'm so happy to put it out to all of you. And if you have any thoughts, feelings, or questions, reach out. Excited to get this next picture out. I believe that the next film I'm going to release is going to be Willa's Peach. So stay tuned.
Theodore wasn't there today. His grandma died. not going to die?
Please don't think like that. Death is real. It's a real thing, but it's a part of life. And you, my dear, are very young, and you have so many birthdays ahead of you. So many.
What's this?
Baby, you have 2 superheroes protecting you, and I'm not talking about your toys.
Just level with me. How old are you?
Oh, I'm old now? Wow. It just hit me. I am old.